Hello everyone, and welcome to my Legendary Starter Guide for Warhammer Total War. In this guide, we'll essentially update you to the newest information in regards to the Wood Elf DLC that just came out, and to ensure that when you're playing the Empire, you can achieve total victory without dealing with some of the difficulties in the early game, because things are going to get difficult with the Beastmen, the Warriors of Chaos, and now the Wood Elves. I would strongly personally suggest that you choose Emperor Karl Franz if you don't have the DLC. If you do, choose whichever is better with your playstyle. With Emperor Karl Franz, I've experienced with him, and he's a pretty strong leader for both attacking other leaders and such. But we'll generally focus on campaign skills to get Lightning Strike as soon as possible, and getting the replenishment rate, and being able to recruit more units, and not to mention the experience that you get for that. With the Wood Elf DLC that just was released, if you play the Empire, you're gonna have to deal with some serious threats to your south. Like, if you thought the Warriors of Chaos were bad, or if the Vampire counts were bad, the Wood Elves are essentially worse. And not to mention, they become more of a superpower at about turn 30. We'll focus on the beginning of the campaign and just securing Reichland so we can get to like a general starting position that you want to be. Once you secure Reichland, you can then decide whichever direction you want to take your campaign, whether it's be Marienburg or going east or south. Initially, in Altdorf, recruit yourself as secondary general and put him into office to be the engineer. Give yours wherever he is, you'll get yours a 10% discount on buildings. The reasoning you're building a secondary general early on is because it does trick the AI in how they're going to respond to actually invading Reichland, especially the Skull Smashers. In diplomacy, quickly in turn 1, make a trade agreement with Kislev. That's some extra money you can get early on. With Talabakland, you can get a non-aggression treaty off pretty easily in the first 3 or 2 turns. Be sure to make a non-aggression with them as soon as possible. With Karl Franz and your starter army, attack the Empire Secessionists as quickly as possible. I would not ransom their troops back, though you could get extra money, but the thing is, you might upset a couple of your Imperial neighbors if you let go the Secessionists, so just get yourself more replenishment rate. Focus on the blue campaign skills to get extra movement, and that we can rush down to the Lightning Strike as soon as possible. It's the most important skill in fighting vampires in any faction that has a number of stacks. It's going to be important for the late game against the Warriors of Chaos as well.
Yes, to unite
for now,
the provinces.
As for Altdorf, we're going to be destroying that barracks because it's a building that can only get to tier 3, and it's a bit of a waste in the city of Altdorf, but keep it there for now so you can at least build units in the first initial turns. With Altdorf, be sure to look for buildings that can go from tier 3 and higher. Then you'll make the best use of the space. From here, from building extra units, you can assault this Empire Secessionist village and secure it pretty easily. I would not suggest looting or sacking, simply just occupy. You will cause less damage to the growth of the village, of the area. You could fight the battles manually, but keep in mind on legendary difficulty you get minus 5% morale or leadership, and that's gonna hurt you pretty hard, so you're better off just autoing. Since you have secured Grunberg and you have now a route to secure trade with Talabakland, I would do that early. With Middenland, you should try to go for a non-aggression pact very early on, because later on with Legendary's diplomacy, it's just not going to be an option. Once you secure a lot, like 4 cities, the majority of your neighbors are not even going to want to talk to you.
By the comet, of course.
Simply continue building swordsmen. It's a very standard unit.
What does the Emperor
Spearmen are
bid?
just essentially not even really worth it. But it all depends on your playstyle. Now, if you see this Skull Smasher army approaching you, don't worry about it. 8 out of 10 times, that army is simply just going to disappear. Personally, I have no idea what happens to it. Maybe the Empire Secessionists will destroy that army. Maybe. But quite often, it just simply disappears. So you don't even have to worry about it. You can continue on your Blitzkrieg campaign in destroying the Empire Secessionists before they even have a chance to
Bring me to
regroup.
my men. I am Prince and Emperor.
Since you're occupying instead of destroying, you can your troops are replenishing very quickly.
Ready. By the comet.
With your secondary general, send him to Grunberg, and instead of paying 1,600 for a tier 2 village, you can pay instead of 1,440. You save yourself a little bit of gold.
Ready.
Before, in earlier Empire campaigns, you were able to actually raid this greenskin village and sack it and raise it to the ground. But now this dwarven army is always there. Every campaign, for the 12 campaigns I've tested, that dwarf army will always be there, and they will always, well, I'd say 10 out of 12 times they take over that settlement. Sometimes they leave it, which I don't really understand why, but it's all about just random chances with the campaign. We're also going to have to prepare for like a one raider. With your main army continue on the campaign, this will be a close battle. If you lost to your beginning spearmen, it happens. But if you continue building the swordsmen, spamming swordsmen, you'll either get a decisive victory or a close victory at Helmgard.
In the name of Magnus.
But either way, you don't have to worry about losing. Will win for sure. Continue giving yourself a discount on troops later on. That will prove to be pretty useful later on when you're actually like buying elite units. You get yourself a 50% discount. It's worth having. With your secondary general, you're going to be building. Treat him like a reserve army, like a garrison stack. You'll be building about, I believe, 6 armored swordsmen. And they're essentially your reserves. Because you're going to have to position him differently around the areas. For Altdorf, if you're playing on legendary difficulty, I would suggest getting the tap room. If you're playing on any lower difficulties, then go ahead and give yourself any of the financial buildings. Because I mean, with legendary difficulty, the whole difficulty is handling the public order. But the thing is, you could take advantage of the rebellions that happen. It's a good source of income and a good source of experience for your troops. So rebellions aren't really that bad. Not to mention, you can use the rebellions to your advantage in actually like stealing siege equipment, like mortars or great cannons.
Men, war calls.
Out of the 12 campaigns I've tested, there was once that I stole a great cannon from the rebels. So about turn 15, I have a great cannon that I can basically... I have an elite unit to siege castles very quickly. It's very powerful. Once you secure Eilhart, the Empire Secessionists are gone, and you're essentially good. Reichland is essentially secured. Now we got 2 threats to deal with. We got the main Beastman faction. We got the Red Horns, which are about to invade Reichland. But the thing is, don't worry about them. They're not going to declare war on you, but they will raid your territory. Now you think like, oh, maybe you should send Emperor Karl Franz and go wipe out the Beastman army that's about to raid your territory. My personal suggestion is leave them alone. Give the Altdorf the tap room, upgrade Helmgard as soon as possible. You want to get the garrison buildings up as soon as possible. The main Beastman faction will arrive in Reichland at about turn 10 to 15, around that time frame. That's when they actually arrive from far southwest of the Widows, or near Astalia. And most of the time, their army is very beat up. They don't always arrive with their full stack, but they are still a threat nonetheless. With the Red Horns, they will be like raiding your territory, but they will not declare war on you. If they did, then I would tell you to use Karl Franz to counter him, but Karl Franz has a more important mission in heading straight north, past Marienburg. In Grunberg, you'll be building the cattle pastures to level 2. In Eilhart, destroy the farm so you can actually have a more useful building. You don't need 2 growth buildings. Just use the cattle pastures for growth, and then build like a money generating building in Eilhart. As for Emperor Karl Franz, we will be focusing him to rush the Skull Smashers that are just northwest of Marienburg. Sometimes that early Skull Smasher army will be with the Red Horn Beastmen. That's why you would have that secondary general with I believe 6 armored swordsmen in reserve if you really need it.
No.
But if you rush very quickly to Skull Smashers to their capital, they're not going to have an army there. They've never had an army there. And you can sack the settlement for 2,000 gold and raze it to the ground. And Eilhart, your northern border in Reichland will be secured. I would suggest like moving the engineer to different villages to get the discount, because he only affects 1 settlement at a time. However, I kept him in the city just because the Red Horn Beastmen are in the area, and trying to take them on with just a very basic force is not good enough. You can make some non-aggression pacts with some of the dwarves in these mountains, but it doesn't always work. It's a very random variable for if this works or not. If you can get a non-aggression pact with them, then that's a good thing, because the Wood Elves either become allies with them, or they just wipe them out completely. Most of the time, they just wipe out the dwarves. But the Wood Elves in about tier 30 to 40, they're going to be a financial empire, and they will convince all those dwarves to go kill you. With the Skull Smashers, though you crossed Marienburg's territory and you could get like a diplomatic penalty with them, it honestly doesn't matter. They hate you already, and plus they also don't mind you destroying the Skull Smashers because they hate them as well. So the pros and cons of diplomacy with Marienburg is not an issue. Not to mention, you get some pretty nice experience for sacking and raising settlements to the ground, especially Skull Smashers. If you don't have to worry about your northern border, you could focus more on your west border at Helmgard, when the main Beastmen armies will arrive, and dealing with the other enemies to your south and east. Wissenland shouldn't declare war on you. Most of the time what happens to Wissenland is they get destroyed by the Wood Elves and the Clan Andrew, the dwarven allies of the Wood Elves to the south.
The nation calls. Right.
Here I'm simply just moving the Castellan engineer to the Altdorf to give discounts in the areas. I'm counting on a rebellion to happen and for it to grow. With the Skull Smashers, let's see. Yeah, we'll raise it to the ground. You'll get a decent amount of experience and you won't have to worry about your northern border anymore. If you want to expand into Marienburg, that's basically a tough call. I mean, there are a number of different strategies you could do. Marienburg's worth a lot of money, but personally I would suggest going eastward and focusing your main army and your resources in destroying the vampire counts early on, rather than dealing with Marienburg. Because later on, once the Wars of Chaos do arrive on the map, you could just convert Marienburg, Talabakland, and all those northern human factions into a confederation.
The Empire to the provinces.
With this rebellion that just spawned, I'll keep my reserve army in Altdorf to discourage the rebel army from sieging it. They'll continue growing so they could continue like matching the troop strength
As is my
of the
right,
garrison
I
and
seek
the
my
army that's
crown.
garrisoned inside the city. If you have Emperor Karl Franz, make sure to at least have one unit slot available, because then you have a chance to actually capture the rebels' artillery, of which you can then use, of which then is a huge deal, because then you can rush cities before like reinforcements arrive. As for like building, in Helmgard, upgrade to tier 2, so you can purchase crossbowmen. Very important to have. You're gonna need crossbowmen in dealing with the wood elves and the vampire counts.
Praise Sigmar.
It's a decent sort of
Bring me to
amount
my
of
men.
armor-piercing attacks.
What does the Emperor bid? I will marshal the men.
Here I was like, okay, with Emperor Karl
Hold
Franz
off.
arriving, give him the majority of the units. Keep one unit available so I can maybe
Let us
capture
move.
artillery. It's completely chance-based, whether or not you'll capture or not.
provinces.
But I mean, free artillery is free artillery.
Yes, my lord. Sigmar compels us.
Not to mention, if you focus on, like, once you finish on the blue command skills for Emperor Karl Franz, you can then go down the leadership skill tree and then
I am
give
Prince
your
and
armored
Emperor.
swordsmen like buffs in terms for their attack and defense. For Eilhart, continue improving, giving all the settlements a garrison, improving the financial buildings as well. You should be fine. With the rebels in your territory, you can actually ransom them and not receive any penalties on your diplomacy. Now, if you like ransom
Ready.
back Empire secessionists,
No.
then
Yes.
the other Empire factions will
Yes.
not like
to
you.
unite the provinces.
But
Who calls?
for now,
Pick up the
for the
pace.
rebels, yeah, you can get a little bit of money out of them. The bigger that army grows, the more money you'll get.
The Empire.
Unfortunately, Stirland took over that region, and that technically isn't supposed to happen. Sometimes it happens. It happens 2 out of 12 times.
Absolutely not.
The rebels
Is
have
it
finally
time?
declared war, or finally
Ulrich's will.
prepared to attack. And it should be an easy huddle. The garrison plus the main army, it's an easy victory. And not to mention a good amount of money.
By the comet.
Continue
Men, we
on
must
pressing the
attack.
attack. And this is essentially where you have the chance to actually like capture one of the artillery pieces. In this campaign, I wasn't so lucky. However, there was a campaign I had that I actually acquired a great cannon. The rebels
Step
had a
to
great
it.
cannon, and somehow I captured it.
Summon the
That
Elector
was
Counts.
unbelievable. From here, you have Lightning Strike. It's very
On
good to
march.
have in the early game.
The nation calls.
Essentially, I'll be prepared to fight the
Agreed.
vampire counts. I'm replenishing my troops to get ready for the quest battle that's gonna happen.
So,
The quest battle is very important to do very early on because you get that wizard that gives the local province a minus 10% discount on buildings, which is very useful to have. The wizard plus the general, the Castilian engineer, and you got yourself a minus 25% discount on buildings. Not to mention the wizard also has a skill tree where the first skill
I
you get like another
command here.
10% off. So
What?
you'll save yourself a lot of money, gold, for building more advanced buildings in the future. I'm going to skip the battle very quickly because we'll focus
My
primarily on
orders
the
are to
campaign.
move.
Having a full stack for that quest, I mean, it's basically
I am Prince
overkill,
and Emperor.
and you'll have no problems in winning.
Step to it.
Simply send your army back to
Bring
Altdorf,
me to my
replenish, and this is essentially
Now, a wise
like the conclusion
move.
of the starter guide.
My power is
Deploy your
theirs.
wizard, you got yourself cheaper buildings, and now from here you could choose whichever way you want to expand your empire.
So,
Altdorf is being upgraded with the Apricot France. I'll continue on the campaign skills tree, improving replenishment rates, and from here it's essentially you
I
can
will
choose
marshal
wherever
the
you
men.
want to go. Now, this campaign will primarily focus on going east towards the vampire counts. You will declare war on Stirland and take over that territory and then continue eastward in sacking and raiding the vampire counts. Now, you could go north as well. A lot of people like to go towards Marienburg to secure the port in Marienburg. However, securing the Marienburg province is very strange because you have to secure the wasteland as well. Not to mention, once you're already focused on Marienburg, you're going to attack Bretonia and then all these other factions. But the thing is, you have to constantly worry about the Nord factions coming by boat and just harassing you in your north border. And it's a bit annoying to deal with, not to mention the other Empire factions basically hate you up there. Middenland doesn't like you, Nordland. You have a lot of enemies up there. Now, if you go south, you can easily secure, well, I wouldn't say easily, you can secure Wisseland and Everland pretty quickly. However, Wisseland is extremely close to the Wood Elves to the south. And the Wood Elves, I mean, you think that they're peaceful, but they are conquerors. They will expand very quickly. And because they have an alliance with the dwarves just south of them, like the entrance of the Wood Elves, they're essentially like a superpower. Because if you want to get into the Wood Elf area to actually counterattack them, they can simply just use tunneling through the mountains and harass your villages in Wissenland. And not to mention their allies, the dwarves, they'll send stacks of heavily armed dwarves and destroy your settlements in Wissenland and Everland. And in the early game, it's pretty brutal. The best you can do is maybe like 1.5 stacks, 1 stack, and it's going to be a very, very complicated campaign. If you do not want to make enemies with the Wood Elves in the early game, don't even conquer Whistleland early on. Let it be more of a long-term objective. Now, when you're in Reichland and you focus on going eastward towards the vampire counts, the Wood Elves will not pay attention to you. They will, however, invade Whistleland and they will conquer them. The Wood Elves basically make confederations with their neighbors very quickly, and they're gonna have a very easy victory.
Raise Sigma.
This army shouldn't be there, however,
I command here.
we can easily deal with it. It's actually like
What does the Emperor bid?
it's the main army that sits in the capital,
Right.
the one that's sitting in the village right next to Gutenberg. I'll go ahead and build some
Summon the
reinforcement
Electric
armies in my secondary reserve, and basically wipe them out. However, when they're not there, what you're supposed to do is hide your main army on the border inside this forest, right where I'm pointing at right there. This main stack will see, if you set them into ambush stance in that forest right there, and the Starland army will be leaving from their capital to attack Grunberg, because they'll see it as an easy target, because it's a full stack versus like a small reserve. You have a 70% chance that ambush will work, so your chances are really good. And that's how you are supposed to defeat the Starland army very quickly, and then you can siege their capital and take it very quickly. The problem with this campaign is
On it.
right now Starland is at war with Talabeclan. Talabeclan is going to send its main stack to counterattack Starland. And if they take over Workbad, you're going to have a difficult time, because then you just spent a lot of resources and a lot of manpower in trying to conquer Starland, and basically Talabeclan's going to steal it from you. So, I mean, what I do is I could restart the whole campaign, because if you go to war with Talabeclan this early on, it's gonna be difficult to get a peace treaty. Like, you essentially want to ambush the Sterling army on your own terms, and then rush for the capital and secure it. You'll essentially be using as a forward operating base, so on your invasion of the vampire counts.
Attack!
This is their main army from the capital, so basically their capital is undefended. I could do this battle, but it's because I will suffer some heavy casualties. I'll bring up my reserves in Grunberg. Though they are small, it's enough to tip the balance.
Men, we must attack.
Now, for a settlement like this on Legendary, you do not want to conquer it. Rebels are basically... There's no possible way you can actually keep your armies in that region and keep it under control. Unless you can actually conquer the province capital. Simply race to the ground so you don't have to worry about it, and then continue on towards the capital. I don't want to attack Talabakland, I'd rather them be neutral to the north. Now there's a small problem here.
Onwards.
As I'm approaching the capital, Talabakland already has sent its main army, and it's going to siege the Sterling capital before I do. So that is essentially what you don't want to happen. That's just a little bit of bad luck. If Sterling kept its main army in its capital, Talabakland would not have done that invasion. If you ambushed their main army, you could then rush to the capital and secure it. But anyway, I'll show you a couple of other examples of different scenarios, different campaigns, and what I found out with them. Here is a campaign of where I focused entirely going southwards instead of invading Sterland, securing Wissenland and securing Averland. And so far it's peaceful, but war is very close. Sterland is still alive and kicking in the corner. Talabakland has been pretty successful against it, and the vampire counts have declared war on me, and I'll be fighting them very soon. Now, to the north, Kislev, Nordland are doing good. Midland's been wiped out. However, to my south, the Wood Elves are actually doing really well. They're definitely a danger. They're a threat to the west of Reichland, and they essentially use their tunneling armies and basically hit any of my villages in Wissenland. Wow, there's nothing really I can do about that. They've essentially destroyed the dwarves in the mountains. And if they could take on the dwarf stacks with just archers and like light infantry, that's a serious problem. I cannot take on with them. That natural barrier, that natural wall surrounding the Wood Elves gives them a massive advantage in terms of the campaign. And not to mention, they also have those dwarven allies to the south. So if I don't even have to worry about the Wood Elves tunneling over the mountain, but I also have to worry about like heavily armed dwarf stacks attacking Wissenland from the south. But so far this campaign's actually pretty good. But we're gonna look at a campaign of where everything is going south. Like you're gonna see how strong the Wood Elves really are at about turn 50. This is a completely different campaign. And I've secured Sterland, I've secured Averland, and Wissenland. However, I've been at a full-blown war with the vampire counts, and I've been beating back at least four stacks. Like every 3 turns, 4 stacks of vampire counts. And they keep throwing those stacks, but with Lightning Strike, I'm able to beat back every single one with just Emperor Karl Franz in 1 stack. However, The Wood Elves declared war on me because they don't like the fact that I secured Whistleland from them. And they've not only that, when I went to war with the Wood Elves, when the Wood Elves declared war on me, I also had the Dwarves declare war on me as well. I used Emperor Karl Franz and at one main stack, and I wanted to siege the Dwarf capital, but however, they had a stack, the main faction leader, and a stack guarding the capital, and there's honestly no way that in the early game, armored swordsmen are any good against Dwarf warriors. Instead, I went for one of their side villages, and I was able to convince. I sacked the village, and I was able to convince to get a peace treaty with the dwarves. However, the Wood Elves did a very interesting strategy. They attacked Reichland, and they convinced almost every single neighbor of mine to go to war with me. Yeah, that includes the two dwarf factions in the mountains near Reichland, and they essentially just rushed every village I had. Even though the walls should deter the Wood Elves from attacking, I mean, I did not expect that I would see this much resistance. I'm essentially being attacked from two fronts. I got the vampire counts to my east, which I have to fend off, and somehow the Wood Elves have so much money that they convinced Ostermark, the Carrick, the two dwarf factions, and even a Bretonnian faction to declare war on me from two sides. Wissenland is already pretty much gone. Averland, not only that, these territories are suffering public order problems, and they're going to have rebellions coming up very soon. So this campaign is honestly going south. I have two dwarf stacks marching into Reichland, and I have wood stacked to actually somewhat to counter them, and it's not even that advanced. So I mean, should you span your empire south? Personally, I would suggest you don't, because you're not gonna have to face this yet. Honestly, there must be some type of important resource, or maybe the AI is just pre-programmed to secure Wissenland because maybe there's like a special amber resource in that area. However, this campaign that I'm about to load up, this is a campaign of where things go perfectly the way it should be. In this campaign, that's about 55 turns in, things are looking completely different. Instead of focusing on taking over Wissenland or Averland, this campaign focused entirely in invading Stirland and attacking the vampire counts as quickly as possible. And not to mention that, when you attack the vampire counts and sack their villages and their castles, it's worth a lot of money. And about turn 55, I'm already upgrading Altdorf to tier 5. I got a bunch of high-level tier 3 buildings. I want to be building Reichsguard, shock cavalry in no time. It is going to take some time in converting Castle Drakenhof and Castle Tempelhof and taking away all the vampire corruption. I'm going to be dealing with a lot of rebellions for the next couple of turns, but honestly, that's not a problem. For every rebellion I crush, I get about over 500 gold. Not to mention it gives me free experience to my troops, so that's completely worth it. The Wood Elves have not declared war on me yet, but I am building up my finances to build a powerful garrison army in Reichland because I'm expecting the Wood Elves to attack very soon. Declaring, they're right on my border, and there is a good chance they will declare war on me. They are the #1 strength of the world, and with their military dwarf allies, they're basically unstoppable. They are the superpower just southwest of the Empire. And there really is nobody that can really stop them. I would need, if I was to say what I would really need, I would need about maybe 2 to 3 stacks. Because first I have to wipe out their dwarf allies, and then I would have to focus a campaign in going to the Wood Elves. And the problem is, I have to keep at least a stack in Reichland to counter any counterattacks that they might send across the mountain by just tunneling underneath the mountain and hitting like Helmgart or Grunberg.
The Empire.
Ostermark I was actually at war with Ostermark, but I'm not too worried about them. Once the Warriors of Chaos commit to their invasion, all the human factions north of me are going to essentially like me, since we're going to be going to war with the Warriors of Chaos, and I can then do some confederations in the future, and that shouldn't be a problem. It's this is my current build overall for Reichland. Every village has a walls, financial buildings. In this campaign, I focused on building the horse breeders in Grunberg and the Reichsfort in Eilhart, because I'm expecting the Warriors of Chaos or the Nord stacks to hit me from the north. So that's why I've had the Reichsguard on Eilhart instead of Helmgard. You'll destroy the Beastmen at about turn 15, maybe 20. They're essentially not really a threat. They're just a threat of the early game, and that's it. But overall, this is essentially the strategy for the Eastern campaign. You'll make a ton of... Like, just sacking Castle Drakenhof, you'll get about 15,000 gold. That's enough to get any of the special buildings you would ever want in Reichland. If you want to build, like, advanced colleges, the armory, or anything in the sort. Now, where would I go from here? It's going to take some time converting Sylvania to take away the vampire corruption, so that's going to take a good bit of time. Eventually, the Wars of Chaos are going to start sending stacks, and the Nord tribes to the north are going to start invading the Empire factions to the north, and eventually I could do some confederations with the Empire factions to the north. I'm hoping I could get a confederation with the Ostermark. But the biggest relief is the fact that I don't have to deal with the vampire counts anymore. Now, while they're not super powerful, they could be extremely annoying, because if you don't destroy the vampire counts early on, when the Warriors of Chaos do arrive, and they will basically burn cities to the ground, the vampire counts will then take over those ruins and expand their empire. And the bigger they are, the more vampire corruption plus chaos. It's honestly just a pain to deal with. But if you can quarantine the vampire corruption in Sylvania, you only have to deal with chaos corruption. And that itself is already annoying, but not needing to deal with two corruption, vampire and chaos, is just better. With the Wood Elves, honestly, it's difficult to tell what to do with them. So far, I'll have at least a stack garrison in Reichland, and just to keep my borders secure against the Wood Elves. They will declare war on you eventually, and you gotta get ready for it, because they're gonna come in force. They're gonna make confederations with the other two Wood Elf factions, and they are definitely very dangerous, just because of the fact they can just tunnel underneath that mountain. It gives them a very big strategic advantage. With the Empire, I'll be waiting for the Wars of Chaos build up my defenses in Sturland, Sylvania. Maybe I'll declare war on Ostermark and secure some of the castles near the river, and that'll essentially be the goal. With the Dwarven allies, that are just south of the Wood Elves, you're gonna have to. It's gonna be pretty tough dealing with them. You're gonna have to either choose fighting the Wood Elves or the dwarves, and you have to deal with both of them. Burning down raising the dwarf capital to the ground, and destroying their main army should be like your first objective, and then you can go into the gateway of the Wood Elves and deal with them. I would strongly suggest at least two and a half stacks just to deal with them, because not to mention you need at least a stack in Reichland just for security reasons. Some campaigns, when you destroy the vampire counts, the dwarves in the mountains are gonna love you, and you can actually get a military alliance with them. Not to mention with Kislev as well. You can, the Karakadrin are generally alive, but in this campaign, they were wiped out. So instead I have, Zufbar. And those dwarves essentially live. Everybody else in the world hates me, except Zufbar. And essentially when the Warriors of Chaos arrive, I can make an old military alliance with them, and they'll actually help me out. And as for Kislev, I might be able to save them. Yeah, pretty much in this campaign, I'll be securing western and eastern Sylvania, and then I will do a full-scale invasion on Ostermark. Take over the lands of Talbakland, Ostermark, and secure the castle of Beckafen. And from there, I'll build a defense against the Warriors of Chaos. I might even be able to send stacks to save Kislev from being destroyed. That's how powerful this strategy is. It's a bit bold, it's a bit risky. I have to worry about the Wood Elves to my southwest, but if they don't bother me, that's good. Maybe once the Warriors of Chaos arrive, maybe the Wood Elves will like me a lot more, since I'll be fighting the Beastmen and the Warriors of Chaos. So maybe my diplomacy won't be so bad with them. But once the Warriors of Chaos are out of the picture, I can then focus all my stacks in destroying the Wood Elves and their Dwarven allies to the southwest. And yeah, that covers the guide. It's a pretty long Empire guide. I mean, it's almost like, it is in a sense a starter guide, but it's also kind of like a mid/endgame guide as well for the Empire. So I do hope you guys enjoyed the video. I do apologize for not uploading sooner, but I honestly wanted to, with the Wood Elf DLC, I just wanted to wait till because I knew there could be a big deal to the Empire and being difficult to deal with, and they truly are. So I hope you guys enjoy the video, and I'll see you next time. If you have any questions regarding the campaign or your campaigns, feel free to comment in the throw me a comment in the comments below. I'll see you around.